Hey folks, welcome to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey, right here on the Dice Tower. Today we're going to be taking a look at this one right here, The Fog Escape from Paradise. Now, I do want to note that I do have the deluxe edition, which means there's going to be a little bit of extra bells and whistles in here that might not be in your retail copy. But let's get down to the table and take a look. Okay, so here I have a three-player game of The Fog Escape from Paradise set up for you. We have the three-player turn order board. We have each of the players having their own player areas, their own tokens here, and we've set up the board for a three-player experience. So what we're basically trying to do here is we're going to be drafting these islanders by putting one of our rings on them, and then we're trying to get our team of islanders onto the boats respectively that match the colors. So blue islanders want to go to the blue boat, red islanders want to go to the red boat, and green ones want to go to the green boat. And if we're able to do that in a way that scores the most points at the end of the game, we will have won. Well, what do you get rescue points for? Well, first of all, you're going to get rescue points for being the first to get your islanders onto these boats in their respective positions. At the end of the game, you're going to score points, first of all, for any of the preparation bonus tiles that you got. Then you're also going to score points for where your islanders have fallen into each of these rows. If they're in this top row here, or top two rows, you're going to get 6 points for each one of them. If they're in these middle two rows here, you're going to get 5 points for each of them. If you're in this second to last row, it's 4 points. And if you were only to get able to get people on the stern, each one of those are going to be worth 2 points each. And you're also going to get points for each of the islanders that got to the same boat that matches their nation's color. So you'll get, if you had 4 blue guys over here, you'll get 4 points per blue guy that's on the right boat. Now, the game is played in 2 phases. The first phase is a drafting phase where, starting with the person that's in last and going in reverse order, we're going to draft which of these islanders we're going to put our ring on. So let's say that a blue player here is going to go first. Maybe we'll take, this guy right here. We're going to take our ring. He flips right in there, and now that is his. Now, orange player is going to go, and maybe orange player wants to try to get this leader here over to the red boat. So they take that one. And then green player goes, and green player is going to take this one right here, I think. And now that all of the islanders have been drafted onto there by the respective players, we're able to start phase 2, which is the actual movement of the islanders. Now, when you move the islanders, you have basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different things that you can do during your turn. Really, there's only 6. And then there's a couple of special abilities that are right here that we'll talk about in just a moment. So the 6 moves that you can do are basically you can run. Running is basically you can just move in one direction, one space in any direction. Then you have the push ability. So for example, if I wanted to, I could say this person is going to push these 2 guys. These 2 guys have to go in a straight line, like so, and then they'd be able to do that. Then you also have a squeeze maneuver, which is basically where you're going to be squeezing in between 2 hexes that are occupied. So for example, if this guy right here wanted to, he could try to squeeze between this barrier, this terrain, and this islander, and go like that. And that would cost 4 movement points here. You can see that all of the movement points are basically on each of these things. So the run costs 1 movement point, that push maneuver costs 3 movement points, and that squeeze costs 4. Or you could do a swap, which would cost you 3 movement points, which means that I could just basically go like this, and that's what this one does. You also have a jump over, but it has to be a straight line jump over. So this guy right here could jump over this guy for a payment of 3 movement points. He could just go boing, just like that. and that is only over islanders. For the terrain features, you can use what's called a cross move, and it costs 4 points, and that allows you to jump over these terrain features, and you can land in any of the 3 spaces that are open on the other side of that terrain feature. So this guy could do that cross feature and land here or here, but he wouldn't be able to land here because there's another terrain feature blocking that space for him. So those are the 6 different kinds of movements that you can use as you're moving your islanders. Now, there are a couple of things that are going on here, and so you can tell that some of those movement icons are actually on the pieces, and that just simply means that this islander is better at jumping over, so he only has to pay 2 instead of 3 to perform that maneuver. This guy is really good at that push maneuver, so he only has to pay 2 instead of 3. This person right here, this leader for the red group, is really good at squeezing, so she would be able to do that maneuver for 2 instead of 4. And then these that have crossing special abilities, they are able to perform a cross for 2 instead of 4. Then you have these guys right here that just have a 3 at the bottom of them, and what that basically means is that they are kind of more like a jack of all trades. They can perform the cross or the squeeze action for 3 instead of 4, not the 2. They're not as good at these guys, but they're pretty good at squeezing and crossing that terrain, so they only have to pay 3 instead of 4 movement points. You have 7 movement points to spend. Once you've spent all 7, your turn is over, and it goes to the next person. They'll spend their 7 points, and it goes to the next person, and so on and so forth. So, for example, green would get to go first, and they have 7 points to get going on. So what they could do is something like, if I wanted to make sure this person gets headed over to the red boat, I could go run for 1. And then, since this person has a cross special ability, I could spend 2 more, and they would be able to go over here like that. And then, since I have 4 more movement points left, I could go 1, 2, 3, because this is all part of that space. And now that I've placed the correct person in that protective spot, I would be able to take the first token off of that boat. And since I only have 1 movement point left, maybe I want to get this person off of that back line down there so that they're further away from the fog. So with orange going, he's going to go ahead and use this guy first, and he has that 3 options, so he's going to go 1, 2, 3, and he's going to use the squeeze option and come right through here just like that. And now that he's kind of set up to get out there in the middle, he's going to use this guy right here. He's going to use 1, 2, 3, 4 to do a cross action just like this, but because he has a +1, he gets to go 1 more space further just like that at the end of his turns. And now that orange is out of action points, it now goes to blue. So blue's first action is going to be to use 1, 2 to have this guy go over here like that, and then he'll use 1, 2, 3 more to go like that. 2, 3. And so with blue's last 2 moves, they're going to move this red islander over here like this because he can do the jump for just 2 instead of 3. And then that's the end of their turn. Now, at the end of their turn, it's going to move horizontally like this, and they're actually going to get another turn. But before that happens, we have to move the fog marker down 1 number. And now blue will be able to take another turn. After blue's second turn, it's going to come back up here to green's turn, and then down to orange's turn, and then the fog will move again. Orange will get another turn, and so forth and so on. And that's how everything continues to move, kind of like a snake movement pattern for turn order. And that's how this continues until the fog reaches all the way down to the shoreline, just like this. Any islanders that get caught in the fog are basically turned upside down, and they will be worth a number of negative points according to whatever the row says on the row that they got taken over by the fog. People will score points for, as I said earlier, islanders whose colors match the boat that they're in. So, for example, this one would score an extra 4 points at the end of the game. This one would not. He does match this, which allowed him to take one of those tokens over there, but his color is supposed to be over here, so it's a little bit different. You can match, but you're giving up 4 points. Maybe for him, it worked well because he got the 6 points here, but he's going to miss the 4 points later on. Anyway, you score all your points. Whoever has the most points is the winner. All right, so that's about that for Fog Escape from Paradise. It is a fairly simple game, comparatively speaking, to other games. There's really only a couple of things going on. You're drafting the islanders, and then you are moving them onto their boats in the most expeditious way, according to you. Now, that will foster some difficulties throughout the way. You'll find that there are bottlenecks, and you'll find that you maybe can't move the islanders that you want to move when you want to move them. You have to wait for other people to move them first. But that's also kind of part of the game, choosing when to move your islanders so that you're helping yourself the most rather than helping other people out a lot and getting kind of a little reward for yourself. But generally speaking, it really just plays out in two phases. It's very much an abstract strategy game where you're trying to find the most expeditious path to the boat that you want to get that islander to, and you can utilize those 6 different kinds of moves and the special ability of the islander that you're moving to its greatest extent. And the person who's able to do that the best is obviously going to be the winner. But there's a lot of different things that you can think about as you go through and play the game. Do I want to make sure that I'm getting all of the right colored islanders on the right colored boats? Do I want to make sure I'm doing that as far as that matching or set collection type thing? Or am I just more worried about making sure that I'm getting people into those productive spots and getting those strategic planning tokens off of the boats throughout the course of the game and scoring a lot of points with those? Or am I just wanting to make sure that I get as many of my islanders off the beach as possible and not leave anybody behind? I can say from experience that getting a lot of islanders lost to the fog hurts your chances of winning, if I can just put it that way. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to my pros and cons. So my first pro of the game is the production value. The production value of the game is really good. I did like the insert. It's a little confusing if you don't know exactly where everything goes, but after a couple of times of restocking that box after a play, you kind of get the idea of where everything should go, and it speeds up a little bit. But I do like the production value. I do, again, want to mention the caveat. This is the deluxe edition. There are cardboard pieces that would take the place of these plastic terrain tokens. And that's the main difference. As far as I can tell, some of the stuff that might come in your retail box might be a little bit different. But overall, even the basic components were good. It wasn't mind-blowingly good, but they were decent enough to where I think it's a pro. You know, for me, production value has to be pretty low for it to be a con. As long as it's at least standard from what's kind of expected in the industry right now, I'll give you a pro for it. So keep that in mind, I guess, as a consumer, because I don't want to overstate the production value. The production value of the deluxe edition is really good. I really do think it's great. But I don't know about the retail edition. It depends. But it's basically on par with what you would find in a retail setting, generally speaking. My second pro of the game is that it does have simple mechanisms that are not difficult to grasp and or teach. The movements are not so far-fetched as to be difficult to teach. They are simple. It's kind of like using, if you can teach people how to move things in chess and checkers, you're okay here. Jumping over one of your other islanders, that's just like checkers. Squeezing between two different hexes that are occupied by something, that's not a difficult thing to understand. Pushing things in a straight line, also not hard to understand. Getting an extra movement at the end of your move, whatever that might be, not hard to understand. So there's a simplicity that's here. But even before we get there, it's two phases. The first phase is just drafting your people, and that can take some time because you want to try to find the islanders that have the special abilities that you'll be able to use the most from where they are. So there's a little bit of analysis paralysis that might happen during the drafting phase, but that phase is simple, and the movement phase is simple as far as, comparatively speaking. You're not talking about difficult things to understand. Now, everybody's different, so that might not hold true for you, but in my estimation, I did find that it was fairly simple to instruct people on how to teach, how to draft, and how to move. It's not difficult at all, and that's my pro here. You have a simple construct within which to play the game. Now, my third pro is actually going to build upon that, because while the mechanisms are simple, I think to do well in the game, you do have to have a fair amount of thought, and there is a fair amount of complex reasoning going on, or complex logic going on, because you do have to be able to see how those different special abilities and how the different moves could help you in different situations and how things are configured on the board. So that is partially in the movement phase, and that's also partially in the drafting phase, because you want to draft those people or those islanders that are going to be easier to move up towards the boats at the beginning of the game before things get bottlenecked. So that complex thought process does happen in both, and I think that's a cool thing as well, because if it were, too simple, it wouldn't be interesting, right? So there's got to be something challenging that's there, and I think that strategic, abstract strategic thought process that's there is the challenging part of the game. And I think that's a cool thing, so it's a pro. My fourth pro of the game is that this fog moving forward, and that's the thing that really adds that stress, really adds that tension, because you know that you're going to get nailed with a lot of negative points if that fog catches up to you early on. So you really are feeling the pinch of getting those islanders moved off. You're torn between wanting to move those islanders that are closer down off of the beach than these that are a little bit deeper towards the fog, but you also know that you need to move those guys out to give yourself a little bit more time to let things kind of weed out and thin out so you can move them faster. So that tension is really a cool tension, and it's a healthy tension. I like it. I think this fog moving down the beach was a great addition to the game. Now, with all of that having been said, I do have some cons for the game, which is unfortunate, and I do want to preface all of this with the fact that these are the problems that I had with it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will, and I do want to make sure that I highlight as many of the good things as possible, but these are things that I found were difficult to overcome. I mentioned it earlier in one of the pros where analysis paralysis happens. And I definitely see this game. I don't usually call analysis paralysis a game problem, and I'm not going to here. I do think it's a player problem, but this is one of those games that if you have a player that struggles with that, maybe you don't play this game with it, and that makes it a con for me, because I want to be able to play almost any game with almost anybody. Granted, not all games are for everybody, but I don't want to have to cross a bunch of hurdles before I even get them to the table. So it's a con for me. I think people who struggle with analysis paralysis, deciding what they're going to do on their turn, this is going to be egregious in that way, because you can't really plan out your turn until it gets back to your turn. Now, my second con is going to be about the setup and the teardown time, and I found it to be very long on both ends of the game. Setup takes a long time, and teardown takes a long time. And that's problematic because it takes a long time to set it up. That means you've got to kind of break away from another game or kind of get there a little bit early for game night or whatever it might be and set it up early. And I don't like to have to do that. I would much rather be able to decide upon the game, boom, 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 get it set up, and then start teaching rather than have to set it up, then go find people to try to play. I just don't like that kind of situation. Teardown is also kind of difficult because now I did say that the storage solution is pretty good in the box, and it is. There's a place for everything, and it's all very neat, and it all kind of stays very neat in there once you've got it packed in there. But the process of getting it packed in there takes a long time because a lot of these pieces are small and fiddly, and they don't really stay together kind of well for it. You know, I can't set these things, for example, these tokens. I can't just set them off on the side and they'll stay there nice and neat until I put them into the box. So it's just little stuff like that. And I guess that might be a little bit of a nitpick, but it's a nitpick that I had. So, yeah. So my rating for this one is going to be a 6 out of 10. I really did enjoy the game. I really did. I like the idea that's behind it. I like the theme. But the setup, the teardown, and the analysis paralysis that I just saw people having those issues with, it really kind of impacted the game more than I wanted it to. Now, I'll have to say this. If you like abstract strategy games that are not just black and white pieces, this is a great pick for you. If you're able to pick up the deluxe edition, these little plastic terrain feature tokens are really neat, and you could probably use them for other games as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on here, but setup and teardown and analysis paralysis are really big ones for me personally. If they're not a big one for you, go ahead and go for it. The solo mode is actually pretty good too. That probably should have been another pro for me. So take that for what it's worth. It's a 6 out of 10 for me because of the heavy setup time and the heavy teardown time and the propensity it has for giving people that struggle with analysis paralysis a hard time. So take that for what it's worth. Thanks for joining me, though. I certainly appreciate your time. We'll see you guys and gals on the flip side. Take care.